Okay, welcome everyone to our Monday, June 13th, 2022, 9 o'clock strategic planning meeting. It is 9:06 and we are just getting started. Let the record reflect that all three commissioners are present in our executive management team, and we have been joined by several guests. And I'm going to, instead of having us all, just since there's so many guests, I'm just going to say several guests with Matt Hawkins. So thank you for being here today and for all of you. With that, then I'm going to go ahead and start and let you start so we can stay on track.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I appreciate commissioners for allowing us to come into the meeting. I know that we've requested it, but if it's not without your invite, we wouldn't be here today. So we do have believe that we have an issue of urgency, both from a time standpoint as well as from a policy standpoint. Let me present to you Dennis Hawkshurst, who's a citizen at large, Tom Barnhart and Tim Kinley will both be available for making comments here today. Ruth Ryan, who's our committee chair. She is not here in person, but she's participating by Zoom. Okay, she won't be actually providing commentary, but she's listening.
She's listening in.
Yeah.
And then Matt, when you say that she's the head of your committee, you're here on behalf of the elections committee for the GOP.
Yes, the election integrity committee that we have within the county GOP office. I'm also a member of the state GOP election integrity committee. We've been following issues at the state level and nationally as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ruth herself brings a lifetime of experience in government policy as well as electioneering, and we're united in one purpose: to restore confidence within the Spokane election system today for the benefit of all citizens. We've also invited other people that want to participate, that want to help drive down to the bottom of having a better understanding of what's going on in the election process. So we're not restricted to just GOP members. We are inviting other people in. We're coming to you today, though, in the role as you recognize you're the highest authority for administrative controls within Spokane County. Since past reports and requests to our auditor for audits or procedures to be followed as prescribed by law have gone unheeded, the evidence is overwhelming in support of a unique audit request. If we were in private industry or even in our nation's military complex, this type of audit that we're requesting would be implemented without question. A comprehensive audit of the Spokane election system is justified today. Prior to today, we submitted a formal letter addressing the need for a comprehensive audit to be conducted now, which we understand is now a part of this record. We are asking you as commissioners to lead and demand through judicial action if necessary to initiate this audit using qualified third-party talent. Simply, we believe in the adage that trust but verify. Here's a couple of bullet points. A sampling of information from the Washington Secretary of State's website shows for the 2020 general election, Spokane County had more registered voters than actual residents for certain age groups. One sample shows 102% of women between the ages of 25 to 34 were registered to vote, and 106% of women between the ages of 35 and 44. In November 2020, Spokane County had 353,926 registered voters for the general election. However, they issued out 382,560 ballots. In our recent canvassing efforts, 90% plus of canvassed homes produced anomalies. Election observers have seen Google screens pop up on the election equipment as they are turned on or as they change from scanning to tabulating. As you read within the report, you'll find more. Our desire is simple: restore confidence to the election process within Spokane County. As further support, we are submitting petitions that include 191 signatures representing a constitutional right for the citizens to petition their government leaders on a redress of grievance within Spokane County. We recognize first that traditional audits do not fully consider the scope of merging 100% mail-in balloting and the electronics used in today's election systems. Second, if a traditional audit is done, citizens might only receive a cursory review of the things that have gone right, while any shortcomings or malfeasance, if that were to occur, will only be reported to senior officials and not to the public. By design, our legislature has created an unconstitutional condition wherein the public may never learn when things go wrong. This is not right. If we want trust between all parties involved, you are the custodians, the people that have elected to safeguard our rights and to strengthen our community. Your oath is to safeguard and defend our constitutional rights. A process system election audit needs to address the following, as outlined in our report. 1, audit of the internet connection with the election equipment, including source code and modifications. 2, an audit of the election systems from printing to final storage. And 3, an audit of the voter records from registration to when votes are cast. What should be included within the election systems audit is a review of our security needs and an answer to the question, why haven't security cameras been installed at drop-box locations? Why aren't there sufficient cameras installed both inside and outside the elections office? Better yet, why have the few current cameras never been connected in the last 5 years since they have been installed? We have been asked to keep our focus on the issues we have in Spokane County to address why we believe you as commissioners have a right to request our subject audit. This has been done. Simply, there are no restrictions that should prevent a citizen's request to be honored when state law does not prevent such a request. As commissioners, you approved the auditor to take receipt of outside funding from a private party who has clear political bias to assist in the 2020 elections and to approve expenses outside of the normal operating budgets. People across America are waking up to the fact that outside influences have contributed to an erosion of trust in our elections. Now is your time to correct this wrong, set the record straight, and help in the restoration of this trust. Work needs to begin now, since the record from the 2020 election cycle is due to be destroyed by the end of the summer. Taking action now will help to ensure that process and systems are in place by the time the 2022 general election is realized. The worst to occur by authorizing an audit, the state decertifies the equipment, and we are forced into a hand count of all ballots cast. The people of Spokane welcome a hand count until such time that we can restore confidence that the election system is clean and void of any outside influence. Respectfully, Matt Hawkins. I think Dennis would like to be able to visit if there's any questions on the canvassing that's gone on. If you have any questions on that, we can go to that. But for right now, let's move to, you want to go next? Sure. Let's go to Tim Kinley.
As some of you know, I am Tim Kinley, a Spokane County election observer. And before moving to Spokane, I was an election observer in Minnesota, where I partnered with an election integrity organization to achieve a favorable election integrity outcome at the U.S. Supreme Court. What I have to say today is informed by these experiences. I am concerned because Spokane County election practices are not fully compliant with the following RCWs. And I'll give you a copy of this so you have the resources. RCW 29A.60.140 section 4, which requires a policy and procedural manual for administrative rules which facilitate and govern the canvassing process. Lack of readily available transparent rules provides opportunities for deviations that can be detrimental to ballot processes and results. There is little information on the manual. RCW 29A.64.041 section 1 requires the use of physical ballots, and section 3 that observers shall be permitted to observe the physical ballots and scanning tabulation thereof, not just using the original data in the server that had previously been tabulated before the recount as practiced during the last election. RCW 29A.60.140 requires that the determination of the validity of challenge ballots and provisional ballots be reviewed by the canvassing board, not just the auditor, as recently practiced, as mismatched signatures were not reviewed by the canvassing board. RCW 29A.40.110 requires that personnel, plural, verify the voter signature on the ballot declaration, not just one person. as is currently practiced. RCW 29A.40.170 requires 2 witnesses opening ballot boxes, sealing ballots, and secure transport containers and transporting them to the counting center, not just one person and not in unsealed containers as is currently practiced. Finally, the US Constitution and the Washington State Constitution only allows 18-year-olds to vote if they are a US and Washington citizen. RCW 29A.08.170 is a state law that is in effect this election and is allowing 17-year-olds to vote in the primary election if they turn 18 by the time of the general election. This is not being challenged by the county auditor, county attorney, or anybody withstanding right now, but is a clear violation of the Constitution. Thank you. And who do I give this to?
You can give it to Mr. McLean, our attorney.
We'll just send it over to the clerk.
Tom Barnhart.
Name is Tom Barnhart, concerned citizen, election observer. And I'm going to speak to security. Dennis and I have worked together to identify concerns regarding election office security. And we feel in addition to the internet security, the comprehensive audit should include an independent evaluation of 1, election office perimeter and internal security systems, and 2, camera systems monitoring all ballot processing operations. For example, the current card activated security system does not report off-site should someone break into the elections office after hours. We've previously been advised that if there is an unauthorized entry, the lights come on. A significant amount of time can pass before the breach is noticed from the outside, and during that time, a significant amount of damage could be done to the ballots, both paper ballots and the digital ballots that are saved on computer hard drives. This would cause an unacceptable disruption of an election. The entire facility security system should be reevaluated to protect election integrity. Currently, there are a couple visible cameras in the operations area, and there may be more, but we understand that they have not been operational, as Matt mentioned, for several years. Other counties in Washington, including King County, have cameras as well as many other counties throughout the country. While as election observers, we have come to hold the current election staff in the highest regard, but without cameras recording activity in all ballot processing areas, there's no record of unintentional or the potential purposeful manipulation of ballot processing. In addition, some counties have installed cameras recording 24/7 coverage of activities on the loading dock during elections in order to record deliveries of ballots from the offsite drop boxes, as well as record security issues mentioned previously. As a part of this independent evaluation of cameras, it would be important to consider video retention guidelines, possibly consistent with election data and paper ballot retention. In summary, in order to give the voting public more confidence in our elections, we feel it is important that a comprehensive audit include security, office security, and camera systems that record ballot processing operations during elections. Thank you.
Just one final comment. The report provided to you last week is material. There's a lot of evidence in there. If you'll take a look at the electronic version on that, you'll have hyperlinks to the source material on it. Simply, I don't see how you can take a look at this and not follow through with the request that an audit of the election system at this time, I think, is justified and warranted. We've been actively pursuing this for the last 9 months at minimum, and just now we're having the opportunity to address it. So it's not been a delay on our part. I'm not saying it's been a delay on your part, but there's enough evidence that continues to come in, and we have even more material that we have in our background that we're working on that is pertinent to Spokane County. We're just not ready to address those details at this time.
Thank you. Vicki, do you have any comments that you would like to make at this time? And I know we're pushing on our time frame, so.
I'll be very brief. So there's some material that's been presented today that we've not had an opportunity to inspect prior, so I'm gonna not address some of that. We will make a few comments today and then we'll respond in more detail to the items that were brought up in the materials that were provided late last week. So the population figures, I have spoken with the Secretary of State's office. They received those numbers from OFM and those numbers need to be reviewed. So the Secretary of State's office will be working with OFM about those population estimates. The number of ballots issued. So this particular situation where we have, let's say, 356 registered voters and 380,000 ballots issued has been discussed numerous times with the election observers and with Ruth Ryan. So in the way that the vote law system works for the production of ballots, we issue ballots to all 356,000 voters. Those are the active voters. And then the system continues to count every time another ballot is issued to an existing voter. So if the dog ate your ballot, you call us up and you need another ballot. Now we're at 356,001. So this has been explained numerous times. This is how the system counts when ballots are reissued. Cameras, I would like to thank Dennis and Tom because you guys have been absolutely wonderful in helping us figure out some of the things that we do. And so we are moving forward with cameras. There are still a lot of issues that need to be dealt with, especially for things such as public records requests and information that is not releasable under public records requests. And that will have a significant impact on citing our cameras and what we can capture and what we can show. And there will be other counties in the state of Washington who currently have cameras showing areas that they may have to consider no longer showing because it would expose confidential information to public records requests. Hand counts, realistically, as is happening in Clackamas, Oregon, trying to hand count all races on ballots would be incredibly lengthy. I would like to point out that anyone can go to our website and go to the elections page and go to elections archives and take a look at our recounts. So we actually do hand count quite a bit and we are accurate. And in fact, I'm one of the auditors who absolutely enjoys doing a hand recount. And we have done those with our new system and our new system is accurate. So those are just a few of the items. I can't go into everything that was presented because I actually don't have it. But we will respond and provide that.
Commissioners, I'm gonna have Mark speak, but I don't know if anyone wants to speak before that, or I'm gonna turn it over to Mark.
I have a number of questions I was gonna ask, but if Mark wants to go first, he can.
Go ahead.
Okay. So the number about the number of ballots that are sent out, I mean, so that's about 8% of people within the county ask for another ballot.
We have people who lose their ballot and we will provide more information. We'll run those numbers.
Which is 8% seems high. Maybe it's not high, but I mean, 30,000 people like had an issue with their ballot, you know, spilled coffee on it, dog ate it, lost. I mean, that just seems like a lot of people to me. But I don't know, does that comparable to other counties, 8%?
Yes, we've had some people get a little carried away with the electronic process of being able to reissue their own ballot. And have at times reissued 3 ballots to themselves. So yes, it's been quite the adventure.
Okay.
So it's just an issued ballot does not mean a ballot was sent. It means
Okay.
an electronic digit was in there, so if a person goes in there 4 times. Only the last one will be the active one, and that is the only one sent.
Okay.
But it'll still register 4 times.
All right. And then can you touch on the thing they said about 17-year-olds voting in primaries if they're 18 by the general? Is that how that works?
Yes, that is a law that was passed in the 2021 legislative session, and that is what the legislature passed.
Oh, so
And
they
that
can vote in an election that they are not 18.
so they cannot vote in an election that is final in the primary. So this here's an example. PCO races are final in the primary. They can't vote on those races. They can only vote on races that are designed to reduce the number of candidates moving to the general election on the theory that they should have a say in who they're going to vote on in the November election.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
we have had to create specific ballots across the state for 17-year-olds to vote in the primary, and they are referred to as primary only voters.
Okay.
So
And that law was just enacted in 2021, you said.
it was passed in 2021 and it becomes effective for the first time for this primary election.
Is that just a
Nothing
stand?
else like that.
Is that a standard registration? Is there something special about when they register? Or is that just calculated when it comes in, you notice the date of birth is
So the
this
system,
person's not,
so the system handles that, and those voters, because they're not yet 18, are considered, that information is considered confidential. So we are implementing the law, and we are doing across the state absolutely the best that we can.
what could go wrong?
It
Wow.
will take considerable resource to make it happen.
Wow.
I'm gonna, just for timing, I gotta.
I just, if time allows, I have a comment to add to that, but go on.
And then for our guests, can you touch on what the 90% of anomalies when you're canvassing? And what is that? What are those anomalies?
I'll let Dennis address that because he's been part of the team that's been attacked in the press about not doing the right things.
Good morning.
Canvassing.
We are currently tabulating our overarching numbers that are going to account for anomalies with regard to what happened at what frequency and where. Our preliminary figures right now show that out of all of the homes that we have canvassed, plus or minus about 8%, about 40% are not home, okay? Of the remaining 60%, plus or minus 5 to 8%, are folks that have what we call anomalies, which could be any number of things. The anomaly is a very general term. However, I can tell you that in most cases so far, those anomalies consist of people. For example, just last week, I went to a 3-bedroom home with about the size of a 3-bedroom home, and there were 11 people registered to vote at that residence. When it was all said and done, only 2 of those 11 actually lived there at that residence. Most of those people either moved out in the last 4 years, or the current resident, which in this case was a renter, had no idea of who those other people were, which leads us to believe, where are those ballots going? Because the information that we have in the way of a walk list is from the Secretary of State's public records. You can get those, right? And so that leads me to believe that the voter roll, we're not saying that there's fraudulent stuff going on. That's not why we're even here today, okay? We're just trying to fix things for the future, all right? And as things look for the future, these voter rolls are outdated. And anomalies could be many other things. But the only thing I can say with confidence that the numbers support is that. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah, it does. I mean, we'd be able to track that with matchbacks, right? Or voter history. Which they could get through your office. I mean, you could look up that name on a voter roll, target an election and see if a ballot's cast. I mean, so that seems like that'd be something easy to check. So.
Yeah, and three counties have received this information, Clark, King, and Thurston. And in those cases, when they reviewed those lists or samples of those lists, there were no inappropriate registrations. Most of them were UACAVA, which is uniform military or overseas civilians. So that is a status that is not public and cannot be released. I think Clark County had one person who was deceased and didn't even remove the post. And so we're waiting for our list and then we'll work through it.
Sir, here's an example of what it is that I was talking about that we told Brian, you can pass that around if you'd like. I would like to add as a 30-year military man and a former assistant voting officer in the military. The way it works as to what you're speaking of with military registrations, I can use myself as an example. When I joined the Air Force, I was assigned here in Spokane. Spokane is my home, right? I registered to vote here in Spokane. Now I am being stationed in Florida. So when I moved to Florida, that now is my mailing address. As far as maintaining address here in Spokane for voting purposes, that does not happen. Because now I go with the assistance of the Air Force, Army, Navy, etc., to file for an absentee ballot at my state, which is my home of record for the rest of my career unless I change it. If I get stationed in Japan, I still don't maintain an address for voter registration purposes here in Spokane. My address is over in Japan or wherever it is that I went, but I vote via absentee ballot.
And that is not correct.
Well, I lived it.
You may have lived it, but that is not how it works. So if you are military and you care to establish your home in Spokane, then you use a Spokane address for precincting purposes. And then whatever your mailing address is around the world for that entire career, the mailing address changes.
And that's called a home
But-
of record, not an
but-
address.
But your precincting address can still remain in Spokane.
Okay, I'm not gonna disagree with you here. This is not what we're here for, but maybe offline we could discuss it further. But I disagree.
Okay, any other questions before I'm gonna? Okay. So getting the information, we had our attorney, Mark McLean, look into this, and so I'm gonna let Mark speak for us.
Thank you. So the first thing I was asked to do is to define whether or not there's the authority to do what you're asking first. And unfortunately, it doesn't look like the Board of County Commissioners has the authority to do what you're asking them to do. They are driven by the Constitution, Article 11, Section 5, as well as Article 6, Section 6, and the case law that followed that. Really don't give the Board of County Commissioners the authority to draft. They're driven by statute.
Are you talking about the state constitution or the US Constitution?
The state constitution. In fact, I think where you guys need to go is the Secretary of State. If you take a look at 29A 040,
I'm assuming you'll give us this in writing.
no, I won't. You're not my client.
What was the name of that, sir?
Oh,
29A 04570. If a resident of the state believes that an
point
aspect
of order. If I can ask, well,
No, let me let Mark finish.
that'd be fine.
So it says if any resident of the state believes that any aspect of the primary or general election has been conducted inappropriate in a county, the resident may file a complaint with the Secretary of State. I think you guys need to direct this up to the Secretary of State. That's all I have. Unless you want more on this, but that's where we go.
Well, then why is it the state created a new whack coming out right now? It's just saying that in July, effective in July, that if a third party access is provided to the on the election system, the election equipment, that if that happens, that they'll decertify the equipment. The implication is that someone at the county level has the authority to allow for a localized audit. The elections by the state constitution and so forth, the elections are very clear about it. And I've given you the evidence on that in my report last week. The evidence is very clear that the elections are to be localized at the county level. That the state might have some oversight as to what's going on, but really the stewards of the election system is the county leadership. And the most senior county leadership is the county commissioners. Okay, I mean, why else would our auditor put a request back to the county commissioner saying, I have the ability to access outside funding to persuade certain parts of the election system in 2020 to the tune of $250,000 and ask for your buy-in and your approval? If the auditor could just do it all on their own without your blessing or approval, why would the auditor have to come to you? But they came to you for both to accept the funds from the Zuckerberg Fund, as well as to expend the funds on issues that were not related to the generally accepted concept of how an election should be run. So by implication, it's telling me that the county commissioners really do have authority. And the county commissioners have the ability to provide for the integrity of the local system.
So I do know, and Mark can correct me, I mean, we have the budgetary authority. So that's the authority that we have, is the budgetary authority.
And administrative.
But not administrative. That is the independent elected that have the administrative authority. And then it, you know, from Mark's description to us is that based on the request for a comprehensive audit, that has to go through the Secretary of State's office, that does not lie with us.
Okay, so then do you accept what the simple concept that the Secretary of State has offered on the wax that they've gotten promulgated that says that if they do an audit of the local system and malfeasance occurs within, they identify that malfeasance occurs within the local system, that they cannot even report that to you then, they can only report that to senior members of the legislature and to the governor himself, that information will never become public. And that information would be basically washed away. Do you agree with that?
Which would be an issue with the state.
No,
to do that.
This is my issue with our county commissioners. Has the county commissioners followed that promulgation of the law to identify whether they agree with it or not?
I mean, I would have to look at that RCW because I don't know what that RCW is.
Well, you have to look at the report then, because it's all in the report from last week.
So and based on, like I said, based on looking at the report and talking to Mark, that we do not have the authority, and commissioners, if you feel differently, let me know. But based on the discussion, what we got from Mr. McLean, we don't have the authority and we are bound by the state laws.
Simply a separation of powers issue.
Well, then I guess we let the public know about that and let the public decide whether they agree with that setup of the laws or that setup of the understanding of the laws. Because my perception is that the public is recognizing that there's a complete loss of integrity within the system. And someone needs to start standing up for the local voters. And that you're right. You know, maybe it's an overstep on our part to say that's the case, but at some point, who's accountable? And if our defense is only going to the Secretary of State, I would respectfully say that I don't think that's the case. I don't think that the RCWs, I think the RCWs can be read with the understanding that the commissioners have responsibility. And I think that's the issue that should be argued.
And we can look further into that legally, but at this point in time, we're not seeing that ability.
If he represents you and you represent us, then shouldn't us be allowed to have access to the same report that you receive?
So what you're suggesting is that attorney-client privilege, they waive attorney-client privilege.
Well, I don't know.
And that's what you're asking to do.
Do the commissioners represent the voting public here in Spokane? Were they all elected into office in majorities by the local public? And if so, are you the stewards of our votes? So shouldn't we be allowed to have access to that report? We don't know. We don't know what we're trying to argue if.
So it is attorney-client privilege that was given to us, although he just read it on record. So you have the video.
Certainly they needed the statute so they could go
Yeah.
and move this forward.
Okay.
So
Why would that be considered attorney-client privilege when it's information that should be publicly available? That's what I wonder. Who determines that it's attorney-client privilege?
Sure, if it's your attorney's thoughts and information that your attorney searched and provided for you, that's attorney-client privilege.
Well, I'm referring to the records that Mr. Hawkins is mentioning
Oh,
that
all the
go from
records.
the auditor's.
I'm not talking
office.
about records, I'm talking about just my.
He's
legal
just talking
analysis.
about the opinion that he's given. to us.
Got it. Thank you.
Commissioner French.
Yeah, so I'm gonna paraphrase what I think you said. Make sure that I've captured it accurately, because I've responded to phone calls for the last week with the same suspicion, but did not have the affirmation of it, is that the state constitution requires mandates separation of powers. And that while we have certain powers as county commissioners, the auditor has authority over the elections underneath the Secretary of State
Absolutely right.
and stuff. So while I will share with you that election integrity is something that I am highly concerned about, because I'm on the ballot this fall. And I want to make sure that every one of those votes that I earn, I get. So I am sympathetic to the effort. But I'm frustrated that I also took an oath to defend the state constitution. And if that tells me that I don't have the authority to do what you're asking me to do, I can't do it. So whether I wanted to or not, I can't do it. Now, a lot of the things that we are subjected to are created by the state legislature. The 17-year age vote requirement, which I did not agree with. I don't agree with. But you know what? That now is the law. And so there are a lot of things they do in Olympia that frustrate the heck out of me. And I wish I could correct it. And I'm not in that position to do it. But that being said, I certainly encourage you to make this case to Secretary of State, because that's the right venue. It's not that I disagree with your position. I don't. I just don't have a path forward that is legal.
I think you do, Tim.
Yeah,
And just a moment. And I would completely agree with Commissioner French, and that's what I was trying to have, with Mr. McLean stating it. And I will say, all of us are on the ballot. We were all forced to be on the ballot because of the state. We didn't want to go to 5 commissioners. That wasn't a choice we were making, but we are now all on the ballot for those reasons. And we had to, we took that all the way to the state Supreme Court and lost unanimously. And we thought we had a really great case.
Sound case.
And so there's a lot of frustration, I think, amongst us as commissioners with what's happening at the state legislative level that is then burdened on us.
The only one in this room that has actually helped argue a case all the way to the Supreme Court is Tim. I'd like to hear from him.
Okay, I will give you just 1 minute because we really have to we have a full agenda, and I know people have meetings that they've got to attend.
But before we go to that, I just want to echo what you said with regard to the 5 commissioners issue. When I doorbell, I hear 2 things from people. One, they're really mad about the 5 commissioner bill. But the other thing is, how do I know that my votes are being counted and stuff? So there is an appetite out there, a frustration out there about making sure our election system is reflective of the vote. So like I said, I'm empathetic with the cause. I just don't have a path forward yet. So anyway, thank you.
Yeah, I have not argued before the Supreme Court.
Well, no,
I'm
you
not
haven't.
an attorney, but it's definitely part of the group that went there. Separation of powers, yes. Also checks and balances. So you do have standing because you're running for office, because you're commissioners, to deal with the 17-year-old issue. That's clearly a violation of the US. There's no more simple case than that. Clear violation of the constitutions we have here. So matter of fact, almost everybody has standing, should have standing in that situation. But so checks and balances, that's also part of it. And so you can, like you did with the 5 a commissioner issue. You can take that to court. You
We're not asking to invalidate any election. We're not asking to overturn any election. All we're asking for is to, again, based on state statute that's out there, if you move to have an audit done of the equipment and the system, that one's clearly can be done. The state's argument then is if you do that, that they will decertify the equipment, which really throws it into a hand count. I'm not asking to go against what the auditor's trying to do with regards to trying to pass out the ballots and to count them. I'm just asking for there to be a counting of the ballots with integrity.
I'm gonna let Commissioner French say the last word, and then we really have to move on.
So there have been a variety of different suggestions that have been brought forward. And so some of those have monetary consequences to them. And so I'm going to ask the auditor if there are things that are part of this request that you need funding to be able to fulfill because, more cameras cost more money, monitoring system, all that. I'd love to have that conversation. Because if there are ways that where we can improve the confidence in the election system and it requires funding, I will find the funding. My guess is my fellow commissioners would have the same kind of commitment to try and make sure that we got accurate elections.
So we do have a grant for the cameras and are working our way through that. Funding will probably be in the future for our public records office because they will have to review any film or any images and redact anything out that cannot be released under the Public Records Act. So for that one particular item, that's where the most likely funding is going to be needed. But we'll go through this and we'll definitely be coming back with information, recommendations, and possibly budgetary asks.
And I
Is
wanna
there a
say-
timeline on that?
Thank,
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same thing. When do you think the cameras will be installed?
And we're still in talks with the vendor. We've got the issues of physical sighting of the cameras. Then we have the issue of being able to mask out certain areas like computer screens that cannot be captured because that information is confidential and not releasable under the Public Records Act. And then we've got the issue of software. In addition to that, if we have to do more masking or more redaction. So just the cameras alone, I mean, that one's still an ongoing process.
And then you said Secretary of State and OFM are looking into the population number, the discrepancies. Can you make sure that we get a copy of that report when that's done?
Yeah, there's many counties where the numbers are just unrealistic.
Mhm.
So I would hope that OFM could go through and figure out where their numbers came from.
Okay, and then
Those are estimates.
do you agree with the RCW, the one here, number 6 here, that if there were a breach of an election system, that the local officials would not even be notified of that? Is that an accurate interpretation of that RCW? I mean, that is concerning. That if there was a breach of our, that none of us, including you, would even know about it. I mean, that's
There
it's kind of
are,
a scary RCW.
so for cybersecurity, there's a whole list of layers. And so it's really going to depend, I think, on where the breach occurs.
Okay.
But I will talk with the Secretary of State's office so that we can do a much more easy to understand explanation.
Okay.
Because cybersecurity is a serious issue.
Okay.
And that is the balancing that the state legislature and the Secretary of State are trying to do is how much information can we safely release without damaging security, and what information really can't be released. Okay. And the state of Washington was one of the very first states to partner with the National Guard, who has incredible cybersecurity resources. So Washington State's been one of the leaders in the nation when it comes to security and cybersecurity for elections.
and so I just want to say,
And then I want to ask our guests, when you have a full report of your, the 90% discrepancies, I think we would all really like to see that final report as well.
When our information is tabulated, sir, the auditor will get a copy, and then I'll let our committee lead know that you folks would like a copy as well.
Probably more damaging than that. The 90% number, that is gonna be, I think, simple fodder. We are working on some other material that we think is even more significant. I would like to keep this discussion open. If you want to close it out, that's your choice. But I would like to leave this discussion open because there are some material issues out there that we're dealing with. We're just not ready to address it today. We have some national experts we're working with. And I think that, in all fairness to you, like, we're not trying to blindside anyone. And we're not trying to say that anybody's done anything wrong. We just want to secure that audit. Because we think that audit was going to show where there's holes in the system or people, wherein there might be people from the outside that are impacting our elections. And that's the whole thing on, when you introduce electronics into the election process, we aren't even coming close to auditing those conditions today.
I appreciate it. I don't know that we will continue. I'm happy to continue the conversation, whether we're in a meeting, because like today we asked for 10 minutes and we're now, a lot further along. So we need to make sure that based on our schedule that we, kind of hold to that, or we have meetings outside. But to have all three commissioners together, we need to be realistic as to what those expectations are to move forward. And we certainly, I think we all want to hear if there's additional information that you have to bring that forward and come to us, because we're listening. I mean, that's part of, I appreciate the Republican Party and the observers that the party has, because that's how, I gain part of my confidence is that, the observers are there watching. If we didn't have Republican Party observers, then I would have my own observer there as someone, again, who's on the ballot, and we all are on the ballot. And knowing that there's limited space for observers, especially during, COVID times, that it's imperative that we have that, and that's how we can gain some of that confidence. So thank you for doing that as part of the party. I know several of you are down there observing, and that's a key piece for all of us. So, and I know not everyone's down there observing, and so it's not always fun. Can be a little monotonous at times. So I just want to say, thank you all for doing that and helping us, know and appreciate that things aren't going wrong while you're observing. So thank you. Please come back to us if you have more information. I know Vicki said she's going to be looking into this and to be able to respond as well. So. Okay, so we've got to line. Okay, Scott, are you there?
Can I have a word with you?
Certainly.
Hi, Scott.
Good morning.
We are way behind schedule. But we want to. Yeah, just a second. Let me get whatever.
Of course.
So Vicki, can I have you guys step out? We're just gonna try to get moving on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, Scott, I apologize that we're so far behind, but we will have you start now.
Oh, no worries, Madam Chair. Busy mornings happen to all of us, so we understand. Ron, I believe you've got a show. There we go. We're coming to you early on in a process that we certainly presume is done from time to time. We look at this as something that we want to do on an annual basis. And if you go to the next slide, please. Some of this comes into play when, as you see here, so as development codes evolve, you sometimes build in some inconsistencies, even some contradictory pieces. When legislative action takes place, other things happen. The markets push us in different directions, particularly in our development codes on our side of the shop here. And so we're initiating a kind of a formal process where once a year, we're going to take a look at pieces of code that come into play for projects and issues that drop in our lap. So if we see something that's showing an inconsistency, we're going to highlight that as something that's worthy of immediate action rather than putting that into an annual comp plan cycle or something else. And all of these, by the way, are not involving comprehensive plan amendments or map amendments. They will be generally zoning text amendments or code text amendments. They will go through a review period, and we'll get to that calendar at the very end. So in view of our long morning, we'll take only about 10 minutes or so and go through this. And we're doing this to give you a heads up of at least some of the things that our crew is thinking about for the code cleanup, and also to offer to you and others that you deal with, if you see or think of things that make you scratch your head and go, wait, why are we doing it that way? Now would be a good time to kind of pass those over to us and let us work on them. So on this first page, you're seeing some things that we're just looking at are relatively minor. When the top one says create a design manual for rural development, what we're really meaning is updating the guide to rural living that was produced in most recently 2014, that gives people who move to rural areas a realistic expectation of what services are like outside of a municipality. We've had quite a lot of activity happening just in the last couple of years in areas in those rural borders, so to speak. And so we think there's a good chance to look at tweaking this in some ways. A couple of the other ones, building codes, we're simply, this is kind of a representative sample of mechanical ventilation forms. There's a number of code issues that change. Commissioner French, I know you're deeply involved in the code cycles at the state level. Those don't always translate into Spokane County code as quickly or as directly as they should. So we're looking at cleaning up where that is. Our cost allocation fees is going to be a 23 project, but we're going to look at issues here in 22 in case there are code issues that will give us better guidance for 23. These were last reviewed in 2010 when a pretty comprehensive study was done to put together the cost recovery fee basis. And so we're going to use that as a contemporary model and then update that for our times. Rural caregiver living units. This is something that is also increasing. And for example, now they're granted a 1-year permit. To renew that permit, you must have a physician's declaration that the member of your family or that you're caring for is still in that capacity and that your care is still valid, warranted. There's an awful lot of added paperwork that we're looking at saying, perhaps you can simply self-certify that that's the case for a year or two before you have to go through this giant permitting system again. Rural uses, most notably wineries. We have, as many of you know from your constituents and others, we have an increasing volume of activities that want to be performed in rural areas. Some of these are not explicitly allowed in the code, but have been allowed through interpretations or determinations that they are consistent with the code in some way. So this is a chance to go back and look at not only are those uses, should they be perhaps put in a more explicit fashion, but also, as you can see here, there are some safety concerns regarding number of capacities number of people, capacities of facilities, and whether they can in fact be safe for those activities. Next slide, please. Some of the more direct improvements that we're working on. Right at the top, plat reform, neighborhood design, context issues. And this relates to some current projects that are going on where the impacts of allowing higher densities in low density residential are clearly helpful to add new housing stock to our communities. But there may be unintended consequences when those are trying to fit into established areas that might have been established at a much lower density. That's only one parameter, but being able to better address those up front will give future developers a chance of more guidance to say, how do we fit into this rather than, well, we're allowed the 8 units an acre and we're just going to drop 8 units an acre in here. So that's going to be a little more than just a tweak. Past administrative determinations, as you might guess, building and planning has been around a long time. There are a number of those administrative determinations that have been made through the past. We're going to take a look at those and see if any of those rise up to the point where they should be put into the code directly, rather than sitting out as a one-off individual determination. Things like certificates of exemption. And for those perhaps listening in, the certificate of exemption is an exemption to the state and the county subdivision policies. And what that allows is, in larger rural areas, it allows a subdivision of land without having to go through the subdivision ordinance. So you can split a 160 acre parcel into 16 10-acre parcels using this exemption. It is in the state code as well as the county code, so there's widespread support for it, but there are challenges to its implementation in terms of being on a public or a private road or even an easement to make these things happen. So we want to look at, do we have the right rules in place for this to go forward? The next one, urban design guidelines. You have all seen and heard about some projects that are going in to our urban growth areas. Perhaps a 1 acre lot that has a single project or single residence on it that now comes in for 4 subdivided lots that could each build a duplex or a fourplex. It's a fairly massive increase in density on a single part of a neighborhood. We want to be able to look at that in again, that same context that we talked about for plat reform. The added density is valuable for increasing the housing stock, but how does that balance with the current homeowners and landowners who have invested in that property next to it? Sepa thresholds, this is really straightforward. We're putting together a proposal to simply adopt Sepa thresholds that are in the RCWs and adopt them by reference. We have some different ones now that are more restrictive, notably grading. And what that means is, if we have a grading determination of 1,000 cubic yards and the state is at 500 cubic yards, if we can simply adopt the state's value, we can cut off that review from 2/3 of our building permits, for example. So we think this is a completely reasonable approach and also one that will help us perform better in issuing permits. Recreational vehicles is going to be very complicated. We want to address it here, at least by starting it. We have code enforcement complaints at one end, and we have affordable housing at the other end. And we want to simply take a look and say, is an RV something like a manufactured home? Can it be looked at in a different way? And also to help not have so many violations. Accessory dwelling units, or ADUs. You've all seen them. I'm sure your constituents have talked about them. They're not pressing as much as they are perhaps in Seattle or some places like that, but they are a residential alternative that's allowed in our code. Right now, the code dates back far enough that they're probably not as easily permitted as they might be. The square footage, for example, could be smaller than the market really allows. And as you see here, a detached ADU currently requires a conditional use permit. If ADUs are allowed in most places, perhaps that CUP is really an onerous added step that doesn't need to be there. And similarly, Airbnb or short-term rentals like that would kind of fall into this category as well. Next slide, please.
Hey, Scott, before you get away
Yes.
from that, in our code, do we require that for an ADU, you have to be related to the occupant for the ADU?
Commissioner, I would have to check to be certain on that. I don't believe that's the case.
I know in the city of Spokane, you have to have a relationship, somehow be related to the occupant.
Okay.
which is kind of a onerous requirement because if it's, your mother and their father and they die, what do you do? I mean, you
Right.
then stuck. And so it seems like an onerous requirement. The other thing is that the one thing that I'm seeing, out there in the community is more multi-generational homes than ever before. Part of that is because of COVID, part of that is because of the price of housing and stuff. And so I don't know whether the ADU is a way of maybe trying to address the multi-generational nature of our housing inventory. But would ask that you look at that from that perspective as well.
Understood. I think that's a really great idea, because that's the kind of language that's in the code that both allows and suggests it. Developers and builders will look at that and respond to it. So we will put that on our list.
And Scott, I do believe Commissioner French is, you do have I believe the thing about having to be a family member in an ADU, because we had a constituent who had an issue about this 3-4 years ago. And I thought it had something to do with if it was outside the UGA, it had to be a relative. You couldn't have an ADU that you charged rent for, but you had to, it was like if a caregiver was a family member. But for some reason, I thought that didn't apply in the UGA. I don't know why I think that, but I thought, I don't know.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've looked at the ADU requirements and specifically, probably more specifically in the city of Spokane than Spokane County and stuff. But, it's just, the housing inventory is changing. It's going to change even more dramatically. My guess either this week or next week, because it's my understanding that the city of Spokane is probably going to issue a moratorium in the 195 corridor. And so, instead of addressing the problem and dealing with infrastructure, their solution is let's just stop development while we're in a housing crisis. I mean, it's just absolutely nonsense. But anyway, they just need to step to the line and build the infrastructure necessary to support it. So, but my point is that the multi-generational home configuration is something that we need to be sensitive to. Is all I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree.
Absolutely.
I have Scott on the Airbnb issues. What is our standards right now if someone's doing an Airbnb?
They're relatively unregulated because there's been a lot of confusion legally in the past about what you can and cannot do. And one of the issues we want to look at is what should that regulatory system consist of? Should it allow for a 30-day minimum or maximum? Should it have a 6-month maximum, or should it be regulated more like a hotel or an extended stay issue? We're looking at, I don't think it's really going to be a big issue for the UGA parts of Spokane County, but it would be useful to have something that we can put out there that allows for that use for those people, particularly those that might consider themselves snowbirds and might be able to want to use their property for some revenue production while they're spending the winter in a warmer place. I'll get back to you on the very specifics of that. We really haven't looked at it as much as it kind of popped up at the end of saying, this is something that seems to be worthy of tightening down a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
The other thing about the Airbnbs is that depending upon the number of units in the Airbnb will determine whether you have to provide fire sprinkling to it or not and stuff. And so you might want to make sure that we're consistent with fire code as it relates to Airbnbs as well.
Yes, and that's a really good point. In fairly recent past, those fire code issues have been brought up when someone wanted to expand the use of their Airbnb, and it was generally not in the context of the neighborhood in which that structure or home resided. And having to adhere to fire codes was a way of, frankly, limiting some of that behavior to something that was a little less intense for the rest of its context. So it works kind of two-way system. But yes, very much in the world of what we want to look at.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioners. We'll wrap up here pretty quickly with these things. We've got a couple of more interesting things related to housing. As all of you know, the legislature spent some time on what they call the missing middle last year. Not all of that passed, only a little bit did, mostly related to landlords and things. But the first two bullets on this page, planned unit developments. Typically here we use them as overlays. The city does as well. And they end up being confusing to developers in many ways because you're trying to say you must be generally consistent with the base zone, but the planned unit development gives you some other design and development parameters on top of that. We think if we simply had a PUD code itself that would become the base zone, could be much more clear and desirable for projects to use in being flexible on how they take advantage of that, 2 to 8 or 2 to 10 units an acre, for example, in low density residential. And similar with the mixed use zone. In some ways, a mixed use zone is like a PUD without design requirements, but we've had enough interest in that, and we've got one coming in this year's comp plan amendments that finding some way of trying to design mixed uses that create, as we're saying here, the idea of small villages or if you will, neighborhoods like freestanding neighborhoods is a little different way of looking at it than we do now, which is to simply say, here's a list of uses that are all allowed in mixed use zoning, but there's no direction on how they relate to each other or how those impacts are balanced off against each other. Airport overlay zones, we have some ideas on how to better protect particularly the clear zones and the APZs that are currently allowing really quite a lot of development and probably shouldn't be. And so that's something that will be coming forward fairly quickly. Urban reserve, the LAMRDs are two issues related to how we're going to grow on our edge, and they're going to extend, this argument is going to extend well into the 2026 comp plan discussion. But we're looking at some tweaking that could be done now as we are unbundling ourselves from the settlement agreement to give us some guidance on how we look at growing on the edges, and in the case of the LAMRDs, beyond those edges, but in legitimate GMA supported manner. And then the last on this one is one we put down here, probably more inside baseball than anything else. There used to be a construction review board. It hasn't met in some time. We have put together the paperwork to change that role to be something that could be done by a hearing examiner, which of course is already in place, has a schedule and could act on this if that all came up. So that's more of a ministerial function that we've got in play. The only last thing I would offer is we're looking at pushing some or all of these forward. If they're ready to go, they'll be headed to the Planning Commission in October with an anticipation of coming to you in early December. And then we would also, as they wrap up and get ready for the Planning Commission, we would brief you again on the status of which of these move forward and what do they start to look like. And thank you for your time. I took a little more than I expected, but I appreciate your attention.
One last question for you, Scott. Assuming that we can be successful with the legislature this year to bring back condo developments in the state, is there anything that we should be looking at with regard to development regulations that would accommodate that so that we can provide more housing?
The quick answer is the planned unit development changes that we're going to be proposing would be the best place to do that, because you could wrap that into a specific parcel and development without having to have anything more specific on condo law being part of the development regs. But we'll take a look at what some others are doing and see if there are some ideas that we could bring back for consideration as well.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just trying to look at readjusting our schedule a little bit here. So I appreciate your patience with us, and thank you for bringing this to our attention, and have a great day, Scott.
If I could, I'm actually on your agenda next.
With water district.
And this is quite literally a 2-minute issue.
No, I'm sorry.
This is the Whitworth water issue regarding a petition for annexation into the Whitworth Water District. You have done this before, most notably in February. What you're doing today, or will be doing tomorrow on your consent agenda, is accepting the documents from Whitworth that certify their board has accepted the annexation petitions from these two property owners. By statute, you have no role to play other than you must acknowledge the receipt of those documents as they are sent to the county. So it's a very simple thing, and it's happened before. The board has looked at the petitions, the board took action to approve them, so there's no controversy involved.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you, commissioners.
Okay. So next we have Lewis Graff and Kristen Armstrong. Hi, welcome.
Hello.
So you're going to talk about an underground easement.
Yeah, this is an easement, came to us, our attorney, Mike Nelson's been working with Kaiser's attorney on an easement that goes just on the north side of the Northside Costco. And it opens up a corridor for the proposed Greenstone project to get sewer out of their larger development. Last I heard, they were approved for up to like 1,400 and some units in that area, and so they're gonna get out this way. And then Whitworth is also involved with this. They are also part of the easement agreement, so they'll have a water line that'll go through this 40-foot utility corridor also. So it's pretty straightforward.
I think we have the,
Yeah, we got some pictures here that.
so where the greens.
Yeah,
the
where
bright green line.
the bright green line is there, yep.
It's the largest traffic circulators. It's pretty fun.
Sorry. And I misspoke, I thought that was Whitworth Water District, but it's Spokane Water District number 3.
Okay, so that is
So
But
the
it's
easement
still-
allows both purveyors to put water and sewer in the same utility corridor.
okay. Okay,
And this is part of the trunk area agreement that was established. I think it's back 2013, whenever Costco and Kaiser were looking to develop the property. We came up with trunk charge areas. This is our only trunk charge area that we have, but for people to connect to the sewer, there's an acre by acre charge that they would be charged in addition to the GFC for the sewer area too. So,
any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you. And this is on tomorrow or next week's agenda?
I believe tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Chad thinks it might be on next.
See it sometime.
Okay. So, okay. Very good. Thank you very much.
you.
Thanks for coming over.
Thank you.
Okay, so next we have Chad Coles and Matt Zerker with road establishments briefing.
You know, it has my name on it, but it's just Matt.
It's-
Chad's fading a little
I was gonna say, so.
What,
so
your
what-
name is just Matt now?
School year's almost over and Chad's got senioritis. He's ready to graduate from here.
Absolutely.
Say-
Senior night's coming up.
Yeah.
so when's your last day?
Next Friday. This is my last
Oh, yeah, okay. Wow.
He's not the
Okay.
least bit excited. so-
Yeah, no, I can tell.
Take that smile off your face, doggone it. It's,
I'm sorry, I've been working on it.
Well, thank you. Appreciate the time. Just as a way of foreshadowing, we're working through a backlog of establishments that we have. Just there's been a lot of development, a lot of projects getting certified, a lot of new road getting built. So these are all out in the valley. The first one here is the first two projects are little courts off of Henry Road out in the South Valley. Next slide, please. And as you can see, it's just south of 8th. It's actually 9th. It's just a little cul-de-sac. Next slide. And you can see it's an infill project. This neighborhood's actually mostly built. When I drove through it, I believe on this road, all the houses were basically built. So it's ready to be established. Folks will be asking where their snow plowing is in the wintertime if we don't get it on our list. Next slide. And next slide. And this is the one directly south. The one we just saw was 9th and this one's 10th court. So they're really just sibling projects right next to each other off Henry. Next slide. And again, just another small infill project. There's going to be several more of these. If you have any questions, stop me, but they're all built and ready to go. They've been certified correctly. All of our normal paperwork is in for them. Next slide. This one's Chapman Road. Next slide. This is, if you've been out to the valley, it's a pretty major connection up into the Richmond, Morningside area. And it ties down to Barker, which has been great, taking people off of Sullivan Road, which has gotten very, very busy. And the road itself, this was kind of a unique one. They built the road to facilitate the continued planting up there. And when the road was built, they had some very large sand cuts that they had a real hard time establishing. And the road itself was certified a number of years ago. I'm going to say 6 to 8 years ago. What we didn't do is we didn't establish the slopes and the drainage facilities because they kept having erosion issues and we didn't want responsibility for them until they got the vegetation established. So it's been a long time, I believe at least 8 years since we originally established the road. And it's just time to take them over. That it's not perfect yet. I drove it, the grass, I mean, it's a great summer for establishing grass, but not such a great summer for everything else so far, but it's as good as we're likely to get it. And the erosion does seem to be under control. So I think it's time just to wrap this one up and be done with it. Next slide.
Have we been snow plowing? And
We have for a very long time. It's a basically private. Yeah, it's a collector arterial. I mean, we couldn't not plow it at any point, even before it was established. It was on our list of things to pay attention to. It's steep and winding and an important connection that a lot of folks use.
Right, no, it's a whole important side development. Okay,
Right.
thank you.
So anyway, that's all this one was. Next slide. And this last one is along Chapman, that same stretch we were just looking at. Next slide. And you can see where Chapman kind of winds along the northwest side of these 3 phases. Next slide. And we're doing all 3 phases at once. They've built very fast and the economy, things are moving quickly. So they are finaling all 3 phases of this project. And you can see there, it's just a basic grid pattern of roadways. They're all built. They're all in very good shape. The neighborhood's largely built out. There's a few vacancies along the very north side or vacant lots, but pretty much ready to go. And the roads looked really good. I didn't see any signs of distress. I drove through, so I didn't look at it super close, but it looks in good shape. So that's all I have for you. And again, we'll be trying to get caught up on our backlog, so we're ready when winter rolls around with the correct list of roads to be maintaining. And does anybody have any questions regarding any of those?
No, I think I don't have any questions.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Okay, thank you. We were looking at trying to move Ken Warren, Tony Hall to tomorrow, but if they're here, we're back on schedule. So if they're available, we will just meet them now. Yeah, let's take a quick 5-minute break. And we'll get us all back on schedule. So we'll be back in 5 minutes. And it is 10:24, so 10:30. Okay, thank you and welcome back after our short break. It is now 10:33. We are back and we are going to start off next with Ken Moore and Tony Hall. I will let you guys go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the time, and Ron, if you've got, there we go, we've got the slides up. So we've spent several months, back into the fall of 2021, working with GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association. Specifically, we've got Eva Olsaker on, and Barry McMeekin may be on the line, may have joined a little bit late, but hello, Eva.
Hi. Yeah, I know Barry had was budding up to this, but he's going to join.
Okay, thank you very much. So been partnering with GFOA to do an analysis of our ERP system. Specifically, we utilize PeopleSoft here at the county and have for 20 plus years, and trying to understand current state, where we stand with that system and potentially what our needs are if we were to look towards future systems. So Eva and Barry helped us. We put together a large group of individuals across the county and did some analysis. And today we'd like to kind of present that current state, future state, and some recommendations to you to move forward with a ERP RFP. So with that, Ron, if you wouldn't mind taking me to slide 2.
I'm gonna just make sure you explain what an ERP system really is. Okay.
ERP is something that I don't think is known to everyone. So we've got a slide here to explain that. Since I can't read the screen, I will look at my hard copy, but in a nutshell, an ERP system is a finance, human resource, benefit administration, time entry, payroll, specific system that kind of puts everything together in one so that you can analyze kind of current state, day-to-day business activities. Also helps you to perform performance management, budget tracking, etc. They tie together all of that data so that you can make business decisions based on kind of one and done system information. It's a single source of truth. Now, today we have many systems, not just PeopleSoft, tracking this information, and many hands touching that information. But in essence, it's a complete integrated platform. And in our case, it's all on-prem or on-premises. We've got servers over in the IT department. The software is installed on those servers, and we do annual maintenance on that. And we own and maintain all the disaster recovery, the backup, and the coordination of enhancements, etc. So that's what an ERP system is. Ron, next slide, please. So our problem opportunity, couple slides on this. Our existing ERP system is 20 plus years old, PeopleSoft. It's at risk of becoming unsupported, unfortunately, by the vendor. We lack accurate financial reporting without significant effort to put that together, manual effort. Budget to actual tracking is manual. We lack integration with other key systems, causes work to be done in Excel. There's an awful lot of side work done in systems, and then it's rekeyed back into PeopleSoft. For instance, manual journal entries. And that's challenging because, fat fingering data, moving the data across to systems, we sometimes have to fix things. Systems and our processes are outdated. We're highly decentralized. We've customized PeopleSoft in a way that has made it difficult for us to go through annual updates. It takes several months every year for many IT people to process enhancements in the PeopleSoft system to ensure that it doesn't break all of that customized software that we've developed that kind of partakes with PeopleSoft. And again, we lack a lot of modern functionality that we find in new ERP systems. GL is complex, managed by multiple departments. Again, getting back to kind of standardization. We've got a lot of unused modules in PeopleSoft. Some of those can't be used because of the way that we've configured the system. And some of those we never got around to implementing for various business reasons. We've got about 126 impacted systems and processes across the county that touch that system, PeopleSoft. About 45 of those, about a third of those 126 are in-house developed. And we think we can do away with a lot of those systems, those legacy systems. If we were to implement a new ERP. Next slide, Ron, please. So we've made a strategic decision to consider replacing our current finance and human resource system, PeopleSoft. And that's the reason GFOA is here with us today. They've spent several months conducting a current state business process analysis and system analysis. They've also helped us to develop kind of a future state plan for where we might go with the new system. We've also got a readiness plan developed if we were to move into the RFP stage, as well as actual requirements that can go into the RFP. And it was no small task. I mean, it took about 16 what we call PIT teams, process improvement teams, multiple meetings in the fall of last year to kind of lay out how they perform what they do today and where some of their pain points are. And all of that has been rolled together by GFOA and Barry and Eva for us. And in a nutshell, we'd like to go forward with an RFP, but we'll give you more on that in a minute. Next slide, Rob. So the options as we see it are status quo, maintain PeopleSoft. It's very expensive to maintain. We're missing a lot of functionality that we could make use of today. And it's relatively expensive to maintain. Option 2, replace PeopleSoft with a version that would come from Oracle Cloud. PeopleSoft is an Oracle application. It sounds like moving this to cloud would be a simple endeavor, but in fact, it would be a full-blown implementation, multi-year implementation, very expensive. So option 3 would be to go out to RFP for a competitive bid, find out what's on the marketplace, learn more about what's out there and the costs and the timeframes and who implements, which is a key part here. We will require an implementation partner to come in and help us to implement this. So the recommendation from the sponsor and the steering committee is that we move forward with option 3, which is just an approval to proceed with the RFP. And you'll see in a moment here, I've got a timeline that outlines that we'll be coming back to you at the end of that RFP with a recommendation to move forward with a single vendor to go into contracting. So we're looking for that approval. So moving forward to financials, Ron, next slide. You'll see there's kind of 3 categories here, guys. On the very top, we've got current state, PeopleSoft being the first line item. Annually, it costs us about $270,000 in licensing. We pay about another $92,000 on miscellaneous HR and financial systems, licensing and support. So many vendors out there. And then for county IT to maintain those systems, we're paying out about $380,000 on average a year. So that sums to $742,000, $750,000 spent maintaining existing PeopleSoft and associated systems. If we were to move forward with an RFP and then select a vendor and move towards implementation, you'll see that middle row there is the implementation costs. This would be years 1 and 2 of an implementation, a multi-year implementation. So the consultant team that we would need to hire to help with the implementation would be a one-time cost. And Eva and Barry helped us to ascertain that, the low cost estimate is somewhere in the $1.4 million range. The high cost estimate is bumping up against $5 million. The SaaS software vendor cost. So if we were to purchase Oracle Cloud, for instance, over 2 years would cost us about $830,000 to $1.43 million. Spokane County Employee Project Team cost. This is a one-time best guess, but keep in mind in an implementation, we're going to pull your best and brightest out of every single department, upwards of 40, 50 people potentially. The subject matter experts that know PeopleSoft best, and they're going to be in the implementation team, and it's going to take a large portion of their work week to do that work. So we're either paying overtime costs to allow them time to be able to do this implementation on top of their day-to-day work, or we're bringing in temp employees to backfill, or some other creative way that we can avoid burnout and ensure that we've got quality implementation going forward. So all told, the implementation looks to be about $3 to $8.3 million. Future state after the implementation, after a 2-year implementation, to be clear, years 3 through X, and these are 15, 20, 25-year systems. You're looking at annual costs in the range of $600,000 to $900,000. A good portion of that is the SaaS cost, the software as a service cost, which is somewhere in the range of $450,000 to $700,000. And we're cutting the IT costs to support these systems in half, from $380,000 down to $190,000. So significant costs. There was some questions when we were presenting this internally around business efficiency gains. Obviously, with any new system, we're curious about what the efficiency will be, what the cost savings will be for all the manual processing that may go away. And Eva and Barry were kind enough to talk us through that. I mean, we were trying to figure out how to quantify that number. Eva, I think where we left off with that was that it's difficult to ascertain. I mean, it's hard to pick a number. With your experience in dealing with this in the past, the recommendation was that there probably wasn't a way to quantify that right now, but that's something that we can bake into the RFP. Is that right?
Yeah, we can ask them specifically on any data that they have based off of their clients, but to come up with an ROI of X percent, it's really challenging, and we don't really recommend our clients do that because a lot of your gains are going to be related to business process improvement, customer service. But there are some instances where I think the vendors can share that they can speed up the AP process, for example. But it's hard to put an actual dollar on that. But I think we can specifically, use the RFP and have the vendors kind of share their experience on what, realistically you could expect. And I don't know, Barry, if you have anything to add on that. Sorry, I was off camera.
Okay, thanks, Eva. All right, let's move to return
Yeah,
on.
I did have something real quick to add, Ken, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the whole idea of the kind of ROI studies nowadays, and I've been in this area for about 25 years now, is that it's hard to quantify because number one, workers perform a variety of tasks that aren't necessarily related to systems. And so therefore they may be doing other things that are integral to the organization, but also, there's no real detailed time studies that, IBM used to do time studies of people's manual tasks that they completed back in the 60s and 70s to deliver ROI. And then the only other thing I would add to that is that these projects are highly dependent on utilizing your staff to deliver the implementation. And it's very difficult to, get good participation of excellent staff when your concentration is on receiving, what is generally in the government, area, very personnel related kind of cost. And so it's difficult to, at one instance say, we want you to work to get this system in, and two, it may replace you down the road. And that's kind of where change management becomes a really bad situation when you concentrate on that side of the coin.
Thank you, Barry. Ron, if we could flip to the next slide, I think we touched on most of this, but GFOA, yeah, we talk efficiency and analysis projections being difficult. We will ask vendors to, and we'll find a creative way to do it so that we can do an apples to apples compare of operational efficiencies we should expect. But another area of improvement, better access to data, one source of truth instead of potentially 10, 12, 15 that we have now. Better reporting, enhanced financial transparency, and that's internal and external. We would hope that a new, more modern system would give us some capabilities to be able to display more of this information to the public so that they can track our budget to actual as well. Freed up capacity to tackle other high priority tasks. So Ron, next slide, please. So there's a timeline for you. We're looking at the green vertical line kind of being today, the June timeframe. 30-month overall RFP through go live effort would be expected. Again, this is best guess. We'll know more when we go through RFP and different vendors can tell us what a typical implementation in their mind looks like. But given Barry and Eva's experience, we see it as being something on the range of a 30-month effort end to end, but about an 18-month effort from kickoff to go live. So we need a good year to get through the RFP. And in my experience, that seems actually pretty reasonable, given some of the past RFPs we've been through. This is going to be a lot of work for a lot of folks over the course of a year to go through packets of information from many vendors to try to ascertain who's the best. And then take them through evaluations and interviews, do background checks, et cetera, references. So by this point next year, roughly in the June timeframe, we hope to be able to come back to you. You'll see there's a second star kind of dead center in the screen there where we would be approaching you with an approval to proceed with an award. We'd walk you through the results of the RFP, the best value choice, and then look for your blessing to move into award contracting, et cetera. And then at that point, we're looking at about an 18-month effort to get through an implementation, which would put us out to a go live roughly at the end of 2024, early 2025. And we like the idea of having a nice cutover from end of year December 2024 and starting fresh with a new system in 2025. So that's a rough target. Obviously, we go through RFP, we're going to learn an awful lot more. We may find that it's very different than that, but that's our best guess right now. Next slide is the ask. So again, looking for an approval to proceed to RFP. Option 3 that we presented earlier does not obligate us to buy, but does allow us to learn a lot more information. And then we would be obviously coming back to you with updates, but the big update would be the approval gate in Q2 of 2023, where we look for approval to proceed with the selection and then an implementation. So I think with that, Ron, if you wouldn't mind flipping to the last slide, you can see some of the steering committee members, governance team that have partaken in this, and each has had many people from their departments involved in these PIT teams. So I want to thank them for their involvement over the last fall and this winter in getting to this point, because it was an awful lot of work. We've got a lot of data pulled together, and we've got more to do leading up to the RFP, and so we're looking for your blessing to be able to do that. So any questions or comments or additional points that anybody would like to add?
I'm just saying, I'm a little blown away at the length. It's like, wow, I mean, that is 30 months. Wow.
The other way to look at it,
Can just run down to Best Buy and pick some up on the shelf.
so the other way to look at it, this is not just swapping one software for another and going. What we did in 1999, 2000, when it was implemented, we designed our business processes. No, we designed the software around our business practices. So, and that just kept pushing. We're still doing those business practices, band-aided together with a bunch of homegrown systems, bot systems. What we're doing here is modernizing our systems with a new software. So
Yeah, no, and I very few people I think have anything good to say about our current system. But I hear it whenever Ron needs to upload something for me or do it. So, yeah, no, I definitely something needs done, and I'll support you moving forward on option 3.
Yeah, me too.
Gary. Oh, do you want to?
Comment on it?
Otherwise, Gary has to comment.
Oh,
If you'd like to
No.
hear Gary's comment first.
well, I'm assuming that we can afford it.
Well, it'll be straddling both the 23 and the 24 budget, so we'll have to allocate funds in both of those years for it.
So that didn't answer the question, can we afford it?
Commissioner, it can be out of ARP. You could use your revenue replacement ARP funds for this.
Okay.
So the other thing that I was going to add to the conversation was in my conversations with some of the vendors at the GFOA annual conference, what we did with our old implementation of the system was exactly what Tony said. We took probably a perfectly good software out of the box and customized it to change to our processes that we were using here in the county. Now, all of the major software vendors that offer services to a county of our size, they don't modify their software. They don't want us to modify. They absolutely forbid their software from being modified. We have to use it like it's designed, and it is designed using best practices. So those days of customizing to our internal processes is basically not there anymore. So it helps us to make those choices. And the reason why is because they can then update their software in the cloud application for all of the updates that need to take place overall for all of the users. So we'll always be on their most current software. Everyone will be on their most current software with updates. Right now, with our degree of customization, we're not able to update our systems unless we go back and tweak all of our customizations in order to be able to update. So that won't be a problem for us in the future. The other thing that in talking with, thanks to Eva, some of the implementers there, there's various degrees of implementation that will help assist us depending upon how fully we want to roll the software out. And I think that some of those implementers have specific Washington state experience. So, we would be looking to them as opposed to maybe some other implementers that don't have that necessary local type of state knowledge that would assist us. And that might relieve some of the burden internally on our staff to have to take their time to do a lot of the implementation work. And again, it remains to be seen depending upon our choice of software vendor and implementer. But I definitely think this is the right move to make, and we should go ahead with the RFP and then again see what's out there. I think we'll get bids from maybe 3, 4, 5 major vendors because of our size that they can accommodate us. And of course, their software model works across the country with all governments of our size. So we're not looking at somebody that, it's just a startup kind of company. They've been in the business, they've learned from the past, and they've got a pretty good product out there. All of the software vendors I've talked to are pretty buttoned down and feel that they can, supply our needs.
And I think it's good, again, to touch on the fact, just because we're saying move forward on this does not mean we're buying anything. So it's just gets us more information. So
just committing resources to putting together the RFP. If we don't say what we want now, it's we're gonna be in the same position.
So when you're talking updates, our updates don't happen until after the books are closed. And so then there's like this window of all the updates get happen and make sure everything works right. So that's kind of, a clunky system, shall we say, for us. So when you talk about though, that our current procedures are not best practices and we would need to move to best practices because that's what the software is requiring. What are some of those?
Well, we would be utilizing soft monthly closes to be able to get accurate monthly financial statements from our internal work. It would also allow and necessitate some degree of centralization to be able to provide those services where the experts are located. So we wouldn't be spread thin across 50 department counties, everyone having their own accountant and being trained on the software. So from that point of view, it's going to have a much more efficient use of the software. You'd have experts using the software on a daily basis, and it's not once a month or whatever. Same thing for payroll and AP.
Commissioner Cuny, same thing for HR, actually. So this ERP touches pretty much all aspects of our entire process for our employees, for all of our processes and procedures. So right now, we are not best practice in the way that we are even approving hires or things like that, right? So by utilizing a new ERP system and setting up the management roles appropriately, the security user groups appropriately, it will help us substantially move into that best practices. We have, and I come from outside public, or private, which is a bit different than public, but even just the security user groups could use some really good tweaking and cleaning, and this system will allow us to be able to better set those up and manage them in the future for all of our security purposes as well.
Very good. And I see Kat Nichols has raised her hand. Kat. Let's see.
Maybe it's
Hi, sorry, it took me a second to get unmuted. I'm in my car. I just wanted to ask if that is going to, if we move forward with that and we find a good company to do that, is it going to apply across all departments? Because from my understanding, there are certain pieces of software that some departments choose to use or choose not to use. I just kind of want to know if it's going to be uniform across.
Standardization.
Yeah, that is the intent,
Everybody's
that-
on the same page. Yeah.
So one good example right now, I think we have 5 or 6 different timekeeping systems that are all decentralized, but then come into the auditor's department and there's different processes to get that done. We would be pushing with the help of our senior leadership team to have one standard payroll entry system and mirror that for a lot of the processes that we do now. With the help of our senior leadership team, yes.
Yeah, I think that's my concern, Kat, is having been in the auditor's office, know how decentralized everything is, and there's going to be resistance to trying to centralize, knowing it's important. So, I'm in favor definitely of going through the RFP process, not committed if it's, on the high end, it's like, we've got to really look at what those dollars are and how that's really going to work. But committed to at least going through the RFP process to see where we're at. And I think then starting to let departments know that this is the process we're going through and that it will cause change in how we do business. So I think that's really important. And, I'll date myself that I was here auditing when I think Ron Anderson, I think was his name, was the head of the accounting department and used lots of spreadsheets. So, and I think PeopleSoft came in shortly after that for the first time and then, upgrades since then. But yeah, and I know then we really set the accounting tree to what we were already doing instead of really taking a look at what it needed to be. So I think it's, it is time to have an update and upgrade. Scott.
I was just gonna add, an ERP system is not a major infrastructure project the community can see. This is gonna be kind of transparent to them. It's behind the scenes. They're costly. They take a long time to implement. But if you look back at the PeopleSoft team highlighted it here, we learned some valuable lessons of how not to implement a system. Customize a system to fit with our outdated processes. But if you talk to the stakeholder group that's involved with this, they see great value in being able to move to a more standardized and updated not only process, but system to be able to help us actually get to the 21st century. With the timekeeping systems, with the lack of ability to integrate budget and our financial systems, to soft closes, to some insights into our people management system. I mean, just the ability to have it talk to each other. You all see where we have different PO approval systems, different expense report systems. All those things are because of our process system today. And listen, we're not unique here. This is my time in the city of Spokane. Other companies have done the same thing. They've said, hey, let's implement a new ERP system, but then we want it to be our way. So again, we've learned from it. We have the opportunity to level set that. And I think the people that are doing the work today will greatly appreciate and recognize the value of a new, updated, looking forward system for the county.
Thank you. I think it's just, there's no formal action to take, correct, Mark?
Nope.
Head nods, I guess.
Just want to make sure that the commissioners were aware and understanding where our efforts are going towards, and there'll be a check back with you once we get some RFP information back from vendors.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, next we have Jeff and Harry. Just Jeff, but Harry, I'm letting you speak to.
Up the other.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate you being willing to be on if we have additional questions.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Okay, so next is Jeff and Arian on ARP planning update.
I just wanted to say, we did a little mini exercise a few years ago when Shrek was stood up, where we implemented an ERP that really allowed them to have multi-year budgets, multi-year funding sources, assign that to people. And it's really been good for them. And I think will help some of our departments that are, to Kat's point, in that place. So I think you're going to see a lot of really good things coming out of that, even above and beyond just general fund things. So it's been neat to see that in action over there. Okay, ARP.
So ARP, your second half did arrive last week. So the full $101 million is here now. We do have 3 categories that are closing this Wednesday. Did want to give you a heads up, just by way if you have feedback. We are planning on still closing them on Wednesday. We did have a few computer glitches the first week. Applicants could see the RFP and they could prepare for the RFP. So everything was full disclosure. The actual receiving of the application piece had some glitches. So they couldn't start actually putting in the application until a week after it was posted. Arian did reach out to every group. With this new system, we see everybody when it's like when you go to a new bank, you have to set up your account and then you can get in and do stuff. And so it was the setting up of the account was slowing stuff down. So we could see everybody who had tried to set up the account. Arian reached out to most of them via phone, everybody via email, let them know we have a few glitches, but the RFP is here. You can prepare, you can get it in as soon as we get it fixed. So everybody will have had 2 full weeks to get in their application, 3 weeks to see it and prepare. So we're still looking at closing Wednesday unless we hear feedback otherwise.
We've received about 8 applications to date. So, I mean, we've got a healthy number for those 3 and watching those. Like I said, we did do a personal reach out to let them know that all of the required elements were accessible. It was just they couldn't hit the submit button until that particular component with the vendor was resolved. So.
And by way of remind, these are the water conservation category, the water and sewer category, and the medical expenses under public health category. So by and large, they are categories of groups that are used to dealing with applications and such. So we will plan on closing those on Wednesday.
On Wednesday.
At 3 p.m.
3. Okay.
So they do get most of
Did
Wednesday.
we get any questions?
Yes. Yeah.
But they were open for 3 weeks.
They were open for 3
There
weeks.
was just an issue the first week, so there were 2 solid weeks.
We put in the application. That first week, they could still see the RFP.
Yeah.
So they could see it, they could gather the information, they could prepare. They just couldn't actually fill it out and hit submit that first week.
And broadband other still chatting.
So the broadband other category is going out today. We had planned on doing it last Wednesday. The Ukrainian grant that we received took up some of our time there. And we also had a few other.
The federal government came out with
50 new pages.
So I wanted to pause because there was some significant attention given to broadband on that. And so we paused and took the day Friday to work with Dale Anderson and legal before issuing that RFP to make sure we hadn't neglected any requirements. We hadn't. So now that's why it's going out a little bit.
And with that, did Clifton Larson Allen, and that sets up their software, do they update their software then to?
I've received communication back from them that they're reviewing it and they'll let us know when those will be pushed out. The requirements will actually begin with this quarter's reporting to the Treasury. So the July 22 reporting to the Treasury. So what we needed to do was earmark any of the affected categories of expanded data elements. And then CLA is actually including that in the application as well. So we're still ahead of the curve. CLA confirmed on Friday that they too were excited about that update, but they're in the process of rolling that out, which once again is why we hired them.
Okay.
We could have put it out Friday, but if there were changes, we wanted to give CLA
I just wanted
time.
to double check all of that. So
I agree. Thank you.
And then you'll as early as next week, the first contract will actually, for your consideration to vote on, would be on consent possibly next Tuesday. And that would be the Whitworth Water District contract. If it's in their hands right now, we're just waiting to get their signature on it. So if they get it back in time, we'd have it next week, or it'd be thereafter as soon as it gets returned. I expect you'll see it next week. And then we're also looking at putting up the last or some of the remaining categories, opening those RFPs from your first round of allocations. That would be the public health other category, the nonprofit category, and under water, there's a water storage category. So those were the next three that we were recommending to get out over the next 2 to 3 weeks, just as we get them prepared and get them out.
that would then close out the March 8th allocation in totality and kind of
for affordable housing.
except, that's right, except for affordable housing. So that looking at the second tranche, if you want to add or do new categories.
And so though that's kind of the. Sorry, I'm looking between what's under my miscellaneous and what's under the ARP.
And back to the affordable housing, we have found some funding opportunities outside of ARP that we'd like to just kind of delve into a little deeper, talk with you about so that we understand what that means, so that that can be in complement to any ARP awards. So that is the reason why we wanted to just take a pause on that if there are other funding opportunities.
I think that's everything directly to ARP. Do you want me to move into miscellaneous as that's next?
Yeah, I'd say go ahead and just do the miscellaneous and then we can do our general miscellaneous after you're done.
So under the Ukrainian grant, tier 1, you'll recall, was $1 million. There was some extra funds that became available. Commerce reached out to those who already had contracts going. Arian worked with Thrive, and we identified an extra $300,000 that could be spent by the end of this month, because you'll recall that's under the 22 state budget. So it actually has to be expended by the end of this month. So that one got bumped up from 1 million to 1.3 million. Then there's also that second tier that's for the 2023 state budget. They ended up having a lot less money in that category or that time frame than they expected. And so we had put in for 2 million for the next fiscal year. They only had about 2.5 million statewide to divvy up in the end. So we received 460,000 of tier 2. So between the extra 300 and the 460, you will see a resolution next week. Scott has already signed for it. It's actually an amendment. Even the tier 2 is considered an amendment an amendment to the original contract, not a new contract. But as the BOCC, you need to affirm receipt of that money. So both the 300 and the 460, because they put it together on one contract amendment, we were going to put it together into one resolution for the board next week. You'll see that in consent. Any other Thrive conversation?
Just to recap what it's being used for, the tier 1 funds was a combination of allowable reimbursements that were done before funding was known. And so we've complied by the Commerce guidelines for that, as well as made it available so that Thrive could enter into an agreement with the hotel on 4th Avenue. It was featured in the spokesman yesterday with definite thanks to Spokane County for making that happen, so that we were able to get families in this month to start doing that. And then tier 2 pretty much in its totality is finalizing a longer term lease in order for that to be a dedicated refugee location. So first and foremost for Ukrainians, but as time goes on, if there are other persons seeking asylum or refugee status, that will be in place. Commerce has been very amiable in understanding that we need to make sure that if anyone's coming to the community for resettlement, there's a place to be. So that's what it's looking like, that those funds are being used long-term. It's being done in conjunction with some similar efforts that Snohomish is doing, a dedicated place, as well as Boise. So we're getting to have a network of collaboration on how to do this well as a community, and Thrive and the Ukrainian Refugee Coalition have done a great job in kind of leading that, with the county being a fiscal agent. Any questions on that before we move on to our other items? The stories are pouring in, and Thrive does want to have the commissioners over once the dust is literally settled a little bit, so you can see what that facility is like, what it's being used for, the training and programming and wraparound services. So expect an invite shortly. Moving on to the CUR board, as you're aware, Commissioner CUNY presented to the board, and we received a planning grant for the South County and eligible areas of the West Plains. We indicated in that application that Petrocor would be doing that site study for us. We received the interlocal agreement document that they've used with other counties. That's been reviewed by legal, risk management, and is in final stages of just finishing up. So you'll have that on your consent agenda for next week for them to finish that out. Then lastly, we had a great broadband action team meeting last week. Commissioner, did you want to recap anything, or okay? Go ahead. So it was very well attended, I'd say, by both our municipalities, private sector, a lot of interest groups that will want to be a part of that, and the group will be meeting again on July 13th at the Valley Chamber location, and we've got a number of just great action steps. I think folks had a lot of, the purpose of the meeting was level setting, lots of different expectations, lots of different understanding levels. And so I think that really achieved the purpose. So everyone understood that as the money becomes available, let's have our ask be well suited, and you may or may not be included in that particular ask, but that doesn't mean you're left out. You're being then queued up for the next set of funding and going forward. Right after that, on Tuesday, Medical Lake City Council met, and they also signed the memorandum of understanding along with the other 5 counties to be a part of that. And they've got some other things going on internal to their city limits, but are really excited to be a part of a greater county initiative going forward. City of Airway Heights has the memorandum of understanding to coordinate our 2 curb grants. And so Albert Tripp is reviewing that, and we'll sign it. And then City of Cheney has the MOU, like the South counties, to see if they're interested in doing coordinated efforts. So a lot of good synergies, I'd say, going on, and we're excited to see where this goes.
Yeah, I made a presentation to the Cheney City Council, and they seemed like they were ready to get on board and stuff, but devil's in detail in terms of just getting the documents signed and stuff, so.
And the state broadband office is expected to officially release the notice of funding for the large grants this week. Once we see that, we're queuing up to, it's a very long open period. It's expected to be open until mid to late August. And so know that we will be dedicating time, but it is a long period for that, so.
Okay, any other updates or questions for Jeff or Aaron? Not seeing any. Thank you both very much. I know you're working hard. With Scott.
Oh, just a comment. When we were back at the GSI fly-in last week, I asked a couple of times, we met with various legislators and their staff, just about other broadband opportunities, other funding opportunities that may be coming through for us to have visibility with. And their consistent response I got was the federal government's giving those dollars to the states to come to us. So I think our lens of looking and working with the state broadband office seems to be the right location. So I was just trying to see if there's anything else that we weren't aware of that we could be knowing how to tap into, but it seems like it's kind of funneling to the state.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Those, it's through a BEAD acronym, broadband, equity access, and I don't know what the D, maybe development. But we are watching that. Every state gets at least 100 million minimum. But there's 45 billion, so quickly do the math. States could get a lot more. So there's a floor of 100 million per state. The state will apply and then they will sub-grant it out to us with whatever strings they want to put on it as far as priority areas.
Thank you. Okay. I mean, we can do mine miscellaneous quick is, so we've got the Shrills meeting coming up here soon. So the agenda is in front of you. See, Josh, you've got it.
Too.
Just making sure everyone's okay with that before we,
I think it's only if more than one of us is attending, so
are you not attending?
I only see your name on here, so.
But
I'm-
as you know.
You may be the only one in attendance.
Another commissioner.
I'm
Gray.
fine.
Yeah, I'll probably be in a state building code council meeting fighting.
There you go. Okay, then we can let Kathleen know that there's 3 head nods for that. Do we need to do a formal motion? And if we do, do I need to take public comment?
If we're gonna take final action on something, this is final action, we're approving an agenda, I guess.
Okay,
So probably the safe bet would be to take a vote, but I don't know that you necessarily have to on this particular one. Just the meeting you're going to, or you. The safest thing to do.
So now, is this a meeting that is called to order by us? the
Shouldn't
Board
be.
of County Commissioners?
No, it shouldn't be.
And that's what the addition we made to the guidelines were that if it is a meeting called by us and there's more than one attending, that we approve the agenda. This is a Kathleen Torella.
but so we run the meeting. I mean, we turn it over to Kathleen, but
But-
it's the chair of the board.
But I mean, it's even got her heading. I mean, it's Kathleen Torella's department on the, I mean, is this something is this held because we, the Spokane County Board of Commissioners, say we want to hold
I
this Rose
believe-
meeting? And I
Last time when this
I
came
don't know.
up, I believe, Mark, we talked about that it still is a board, a meeting that is basically.
called by us, though.
Called by, since we're the chair of the committee.
Well, if you're calling it, then yeah.
Okay, all right.
I mean, even though she's putting that on the information, it's
Yeah.
still, we are the
Okay.
the chair of that committee and run the committee, we just turn it over to her.
Okay.
So, okay, so if we're gonna take, if you think we needed to take a formal action, then I'm asking to ensure that I'm doing the Public Meeting Act properly, I will call,
Put up for public comment, yeah.
Once there's a motion.
is it once there's a motion
Yeah.
or,
Before final action is taken.
okay,
I will second the approval of the draft June 24th Skrills agenda.
okay, so I have a motion and a second. Since this will be final action on this agenda item, I will open it up for public comment. For anyone that would like to comment on the Spokane County Regional Interlocal Leadership Structure meeting scheduled for June 24th, 2022. First call. Please raise your hand or hit *9, I think is to unmute yourself if you're on the phone. Second call for anyone wishing to testify on this or to comment on this item. Third and final call. Seeing none, then I will, then seeing if there any other discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye, motion passes unanimously. Okay, Scott, any other miscellaneous items?
Nope.
How was the research trip?
It was good.
I guess that'd be the miscellaneous item for me, is kind of seeing how things went.
It was good, it was productive, it was different, that was for sure. The Capitol and all the member office buildings still have very heightened security. So where we normally have a conference room that's on the Capitol campus, we weren't able to do that. So we were actually probably 3-4 blocks away from the Capitol in just kind of a commercial office building in a conference room. So that was different. So there was that travel time that had to be worked if somebody wasn't coming to us, we were going to them. So that was definitely different from previous years, but a lot of issues covered, a lot of issues that haven't really been covered in previous years. Everything from I mean, there was a lot of discussion on broadband. There's the GMEs, a lot of dam discussion this year on Lower Snake River dams. I mean, I had a good time. I think it was a worthwhile trip. So.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think the dam conversation was probably the one that had the greatest amount of energy around it and stuff, because it was timely. They released the report last week under the direction of Senator Murray and Governor Inslee with regard to what the cost implications would be of removing the dams. I think even that report, I've just been going through it very briefly, but even that report, I think, grossly underestimates not only the cost, but also the human impact of Eastern Washington. I mean, it would be nice to know that the people on the west side could see over the top of the Cascades, but that doesn't seem to be the case so far, and that's disappointing. That's very disappointing. But did have private meetings with the Congresswoman, as well as I think Josh and I attended a session with Congressman Rick Larson. I thought that was a good meeting and talking about infrastructure and his role. And then I had Friday a separate session with Senator Murray and stuff, talking about Fairchild and supportive of a variety of issues from my standpoint, particularly the West Plains, getting water to the West Plains drinkable, and also infrastructure projects and stuff. And so I'd say all in all, it was a good session. I thought we had a good meeting at the Japanese embassy, and that was I thought that was encouraging that they were as anxious to do business with us as we were with them. So hopefully that will open up some doors to bring some foreign investment in Spokane County. So yeah.
Yeah, we had great interactions with Senator Murray's office, Congresswoman Forrest Ryder's office, Senator Campbell's office, Congressman Larson's office, Congressman Fulcher's office from Idaho. A lot of healthcare stuff, mental health conversations, just hearing kind of what their priorities were on broadband. So I thought they did a good job getting access to a lot of different. We had USDOT at our end session, so more on infrastructure. They had a Chamber of Commerce meeting with Greater Chamber of Commerce. We were over at the infrastructure meeting with Congressman Larson. But yeah, I thought it was, and great connections from the Spokane delegation going back. Higher ed, we had healthcare, a couple of small businesses, some government, city of Spokane Valley, city of Everett Heights, both had a council member there. City of Spokane had a councilman there. Yeah, that was good.
Thank you. Anything else?
Just a real brief update. There'll be a new face in these meetings and commissioner meetings starting tomorrow for all through summer. We have a new intern. Her name is Ashley. She's a senior at Whitworth studying political science. She'll only be here on Mondays and Tuesdays. She'll be stationed up at the front desk when we're not in session with the board meeting. And Jeff, Arian, myself, all of you are welcome to give her projects. We're going to try to keep her busy, but a lot of her times are going to be witnessing the role of local government and how it works. And so you'll see a new face, and I'll introduce her tomorrow. She's in orientation today, so she's going through all that fun stuff. But tomorrow will be her official first day.
So does this mean we've met our quota on Ashley's on the county?
Yeah,
Okay.
so last,
Hope so.
last Friday, I had conversations with Ashley Cameron, Ashley Sill, the new intern, and then Ashley Allen. And I did mix them up. I was like, oh, wrong Ashley. Yeah, well, that we're over our quota for Ashleys at the county.
It was a 1980s thing for sure. There were about 7 of us in every class I was ever in.
Well, I mean, you know, this came to my attention last week that, you know, we, names for children have a tendency to follow things that we happen to value at the time at the birth and stuff. So we will probably now start seeing names like gas and diesel and solar and stuff like that. I don't know. It just.
Couldn't resist, could you?
It's a trend.
Very good. Well, thank you all. It is 11:29. Any other miscellaneous items or any other information? Okay, seeing none, then I'm going to adjourn the meeting for today as there's no further business. Thank you, and we will reconvene tomorrow at 9 o'clock for our budget workshop here in the same room.
So